Thank you for the kind introduction. As you mentioned, I am Raymond E Kofinti, currently collaborating with the African Center of Excellence for Inequality Research, the Kenya Node. And this is one of our collaborative works, the nexus between consumption inequality and multidimensional poverty in Ghana. The team of collaborators in my center comprise Professor Damiano Manda, Dr. Martine Olechea, Professor Germano Mwabu. My presentation has 8 main blocks of issues. Starting with the background and motivation, with a closure on conclusion and recommendation. Has seen an increase. This is evident in the gap between the average income earnings of the top 10% and the bottom 50% widening by more than 75%. There are several ramifications to the widening of within-country inequality. On one hand, it will suggest that country-level gains in poverty reduction and human development may be hindered. It also warrants the projection of country-level specific efforts in the inequality challenge. Given that inequality is not always inevitable in a country, but may be as a result of government or political choice, practices, and economic context. This has stimulated the interest of researchers and policymakers in understanding the implications of within inequality on various economic indicators, the leading among them being poverty and well-being. However, existing studies on the implications of inequality on poverty have narrowly concentrated on monetary poverty in income or consumption expenditure. With the increasing consensus that poverty is multidimensional and its proposition as a useful tool in broad-based poverty reduction, focusing on only the monetary poverty implications of inequality may undermine inequality consequences, and these will translate into inaccurate conclusions. Given that within country inequality is of concern, there is the need to explore potential mediators in the inequality poverty linkage. Such modulating variables may reflect country-level idiosyncrasies that could amplify or attenuate the effect of inequality. We build on the literature by focusing on Ghana, a country with increasing consumption inequality over the last 2 decades. Consequently, existing studies have assessed the inequality situation across multiple fronts, i.e., spatial and gender dimensions, evolutions and patterns and determinants, and its effects on monetary poverty. However, studies are yet to examine the effect of inequality on multidimensional poverty, and there is also paucity of evidence as far as the transmission channels are concerned. Our study fills these gaps by setting out three main objectives. We decompose district inequality across national and ecological zones.
Raymond, are you there?
Consumption inequality and multidimensional poverty. Several propositions can be used to explain the relationship between inequality and multidimensional poverty. Among them are the relative deprivation hypothesis, the tunnel effect hypothesis, and the theory of cumulative causation. However, prominent among these propositions and relevant to Ghana is that of the theory of cumulative causation. The theory notes that once a region becomes a forerunner in socioeconomic development by reason of some comparative advantage, the region becomes a hub of economic activity. Growth tend to concentrate in such regions, and this automatically creates lagging regions. And if the spillover of growth in the forerunner regions are not forthcoming, the lagging regions may become deprived of essential services in health, education, among others, deepening deprivations. Given the historical evidence, especially in the context of Ghana, where some territorial regions in the southern part of Ghana continue to flourish because of considerable state and private investment in them over a long period of time, lend support to the theory of cumulative causation. So within this theory, we have our a priori expectation of inequality increasing multidimensional poverty in Ghana. Besides the direct linkage of consumption inequality on multidimensional poverty, we have advanced with the theory of cumulative causation. Figure 2 highlights two potential channels through which consumption inequality can be transmitted to affect multidimensional poverty. That's neighborhood unrest and labor market challenges. The neighborhood unrest channel holds that people who feel they are disadvantaged relative to others within the same society may become frustrated and may often diffuse violence and aggression tendencies towards the better off. This may translate into societal disorganization, and as a result, societal members' initiatives such as operating farm and non-farm businesses may become hindered, and that freedom to access public services obstructed, thereby deepening household deprivations. From the channel of labor market challenges, we argue that inequality stimulates inefficiencies and suboptimal allocations in the labor market. And this has a direct bearing on livelihood and deprivations, given that households are the suppliers of labor. Two main sources of data are employed for this study. The first being the Ghana Living Standard Survey and administrative and constructed data. The Ghana Living Standard Survey is a nationally representative data, and we leverage on the last 3 rounds, the GLSS 5, GLSS 6, and that of 7, with their respective household size, targeting the households. The number of districts in GLSS 5 6, 7 were 110, 170, and 2114. The district information is very important to this study, given that our objective 1 utilize all these 3 rounds, with the districts being the unit of analysis. The variation of the districts indicate that over time, there has been creation and redesignation of districts over the period of the survey. That is from 2005 to 2017. Hence, we harmonize the number of districts covered in GLSS 7 and 6 to match the 109 districts in GLSS 5. Objective 2 and 3, however, employed the most recent round of the Ghana Living Standard Survey, mainly because it covers adequately the indicators used in measuring the multidimensional poverty. And our estimation sample targeted 12,837 households. The administrative and constructed data augmented the GLSS 7 at the district level. Table 1 depicts the administrative and constructed data and their respective sources. That is the share of a district population in total population sourced from the Ghana Statistical Service, the district surface land area in square kilometers, sourced from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture's website, and district profiles in Wikipedia, the district development score in 2016-2017 survey period, sourced from UNICEF district league table, and the number of public basic and secondary level schools in the districts in 2016-2017. This is also sourced from the annual school census data from Ministry of Education and Education Statistics document from Ghana Statistical Service. We swiftly move on to the measurement of key variables. Multidimensional poverty
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our ACEIR seminar on the nexus between consumption inequality and multidimensional poverty in Ghana, presented by Dr. Raymond Kofinti, who is a lecturer at the Department of Data Science and Economic Policy at the School of Economics, University of Cape Coast in Ghana. Raymond is currently collaborating on research by the Kenya node of ACEIR at the University of Nairobi after being awarded an Arua Emerging Career Research Fellowship in 2023. Raymond is an applied economics researcher with interests in welfare economics and global health research. His research involves a multifaceted approach to examining poverty, deprivations, and inequalities in health using mathematical and applied econometrics techniques. He has acquired the requisite experience and international exposure from the mobility program sponsored by the African Economic Research Consortium and the Africa Institute, Western University in London, Ontario. Raymond aspires to contribute to inequality and poverty research significantly, be at the forefront of graduate training, and make intellectual contributions to welfare-related policy options and dialogues within sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you so much, Raymond, for speaking to us today. And I am going to hand over to you. So Raymond will speak for about 40 minutes, and then we will move to Q&A after that. Raymond, are you there?
Hello, thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Raymond.
Thank you for the kind introduction. As you mentioned, I am Raymond E Kofinti, currently collaborating with the African Center of Excellence for Inequality Research, the Kenya node. And this is one of our collaborative works, the nexus between consumption inequality and multidimensional poverty in Ghana. The team of collaborators in my center comprise Professor Damiano Manda, Dr. Martine Olechea, Professor Germano Mwabu. My presentation has 8 main blocks of issues. Starting with the background and motivation, with a closure on conclusion and recommendation. Has seen an increase. This is evident in the gap between the average income earnings of the top 10% and the bottom 50% widening by more than 75%. There are several ramifications to the widening of within-country inequality. On one hand, it will suggest that country-level gains in poverty reduction and human development may be hindered. It also warrants the projection of country-level specific efforts in the inequality challenge. Given that inequality is not always inevitable in a country, but may be as a result of government or political choice, practices, and economic context. This has stimulated the interest of researchers and policymakers in understanding the implications of within inequality on various economic indicators, the leading among them being poverty and well-being. However, existing studies on the implications of inequality on poverty have narrowly concentrated on monetary poverty in income or consumption expenditure. With the increasing consensus that poverty is multidimensional and its proposition as a useful tool in broad-based poverty reduction, focusing on only the monetary poverty implications of inequality may undermine inequality consequences, and these will translate into inaccurate conclusions. Given that within country inequality is of concern, there is the need to explore potential mediators in the inequality poverty linkage. Such modulating variables may reflect country-level idiosyncrasies that could amplify or attenuate the effect of inequality. We build on the literature by focusing on Ghana, a country with increasing consumption inequality over the last 2 decades. Consequently, existing studies have assessed the inequality situation across multiple fronts, i.e., spatial and gender dimensions, evolutions and patterns and determinants, and its effects on monetary poverty. However, studies are yet to examine the effect of inequality on multidimensional poverty, and there is also paucity of evidence as far as the transmission channels are concerned. Our study fills these gaps by setting out 3 main objectives. We decompose district inequality across national and ecological zones.
Raymond, are you there?
Consumption inequality and multidimensional poverty. Several propositions can be used to explain the relationship between inequality and multidimensional poverty. Among them are the relative deprivation hypothesis, the tunnel effect hypothesis, and the theory of cumulative causation. However, prominent among these propositions and relevant to Ghana is that of the theory of cumulative causation. The theory notes that once a region becomes a forerunner in socioeconomic development by reason of some comparative advantage, the region becomes a hub of economic activity. Growth tend to concentrate in such regions, and this automatically create lagging regions. And if the spillover of growth in the forerunner regions are not forthcoming, the lagging regions may become deprived of essential services in health, education, among others, deepening deprivations. Given the historical evidence, especially in the context of Ghana, where some territorial regions in the southern part of Ghana continue to flourish because of considerable state and private investment in them over a long period of time, lend support to the theory of cumulative causation. So within this theory, we have our a priori expectation of inequality increasing multidimensional poverty in Ghana. Besides the direct linkage of consumption inequality on multidimensional poverty, we have advanced with the theory of cumulative causation. Figure 2 highlights 2 potential channels through which consumption inequality can be transmitted to affect multidimensional poverty. That's neighborhood unrest and labor market challenges. The neighborhood unrest channel holds that people who feel they are disadvantaged relative to others within the same society may become frustrated and may often diffuse violence and aggression tendencies towards the better off. This may translate into societal disorganization, and as a result, societal members' initiatives such as operating farm and non-farm businesses may become hindered, and that freedom to access public services obstructed, thereby deepening household deprivations. From the channel of labor market challenges, we argue that inequality stimulates inefficiencies and suboptimal allocations in the labor market. And this has a direct bearing on livelihood and deprivations, given that households are the suppliers of labor. Two main sources of data are employed for this study. The first being the Ghana Living Standard Survey and administrative and constructed data. The Ghana Living Standard Survey is a nationally representative data, and we leverage on the last 3 rounds, the GLSS 5, GLSS 6, and that of 7, with their respective household size, targeting the households. The number of districts in GLSS 5, 6, 7 were 110, 170, and 2114. The district's information is very important to this study, given that our objective 1 utilize all these 3 rounds, with the districts being the unit of analysis. The variation of the districts indicate that over time, there has been creation and redesignation of districts over the period of the survey, that is from 2005 to 2017. Hence, we harmonize the number of districts covered in GLSS 7 and 6 to match the 109 districts in GLSS 5. Objective 2 and 3, however, employed the most recent round of the Ghana Living Standard Survey, mainly because it covers adequately the indicators used in measuring the multidimensional poverty. And our estimation sample targeted 12,837 households. The administrative and constructed data augmented the GLSS 7 at the district level. Table 1 depicts the administrative and constructed data and their respective sources. That is the share of a district population in total population sourced from the Ghana Statistical Service, the district surface land area in square kilometers, sourced from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture's website, and district profiles in Wikipedia, the district development score in 2016-2017 survey period, sourced from UNICEF district league table, and the number of public basic and secondary level schools in the districts in 2016-2017. This is also sourced from the annual school census data from Ministry of Education and Education Statistics document from Ghana Statistical Service. We swiftly move on to the measurement of key variables. Multidimensional poverty is our main dependent variable of the study. It is measured using the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. As figure 2 depicts, the approach has 3 dimensions in health, education, and standards of living. We can all see from the diagram that the dimensions map onto the deprivation indicators. For instance, health dimensions mapping onto food, 3 deprivation indicators: food security, child nutrition, and health insurance. All of these indicators have their respective cutoffs and internal weighting within dimensions. The education dimension also boasts of 3 indicators: that's school attendance, school lack, and school attainment. Finally, the standards of living dimension has 7 indicators. In all, 13 indicators were used to measure the multidimensional poverty of households in Ghana as our dependent variable. So equation 1 defines the multidimensional deprivation scores of household as a function of deprivation indicators and the weight. Delta I is a weighted household deprivation, weighted household multidimensional deprivation scores, and it ranges from 0 to 1, with higher values indicating, or closer values to 1 indicating higher values of multi-dimensional deprivations. Q and W represent the weight and indicators, deprivation indicators respectively. Equation 2, that is the weighted household multi-dimensional deprivation scores exceeding 0.33, identifies the multi-dimensionally poor households as those deprived in 1/3 of total deprivations. Our main independent variable for the study is the consumption inequality. And 3 measures are used. Even though 3 measures are used in this study in line with existing studies, Gini coefficient happens to be our main inequality measure, which of course we know is based on the Lorenz curve and has a lower and upper bound of 0 and 1, representing complete equality and perfect inequality. For the purposes of robustness check, we also leverage on the Tails L index, which is from the family of the generalized entropy inequality measures, and the Atkinson class of inequality, which incorporates social welfare in its assessment. It is worth mentioning that the underlying welfare measure used for the inequality metrics is household consumption per adult equivalent. 2 potential channel variables were explored in the study, that is neighborhood unrest and labor market challenges. The neighborhood unrest is measured as the incidence of stealing, assault, and threats experienced by household members at home or within the neighborhood in the past 36 months preceding the survey. We measure this at the cluster level, hence representing neighborhood. For the labor market challenges, 3 prevailing indicators were used to measure the labor market challenges. That's precarious employment, informal employment, and underemployment. To ensure internal consistency within our model, we accounted for other household control variable which captured household heads characteristic and household information, discrete control variables, and regional fixed effects. Equation 3 shows our baseline model, which is an ordinary least square model and a function of household, a function of inequality, that's multidimensional poverty, a function of inequality, household controls, discrete controls, and regional fixed effect. The main parameter of interest over here is beta, that is the coefficient of inequality at the baseline level. However, we suspect the beta coefficient to be laden with potential endogeneity, which can arise from several sources: measurement errors in the inequality measure, unobservable factors in the poverty model, omitted variables, and simultaneity bias between multidimensional poverty and inequality. We adopt the control function method to address this problem by projecting 2 candidate instruments for consumption inequality, namely the share of a district population in total population in 2017 and district surface land area in square kilometers. We advance relevant arguments for the candidate instrument. For instance, the share of a district population in the total population. Within the context of Ghana District Assembly Common Fund, which is used to support developmental activities in the district, is partly a function of district population. Hence, larger districts have larger funds to provide public services within their district compared to relatively smaller districts. This widens the inequality in the country. For this, in terms of the district surface land area in square kilometers, the Constitution invests executive powers in the president to create districts. Over the years, several districts have been created in the country with varying endowments, including surface land area, thereby increasing inequality. We also advance the excludability argument for our candidate instrument by saying that this instrument can be excluded from the multidimensional poverty model, and their effect on multidimensional poverty can only go through the consumption inequality at the district level. By controlling for key confounding effects such as district development score, public services in the districts such as basic and secondary school, the number of basic and secondary schools, and regional fixed effects. So our control function model is specified in equation 4 and 5. Equation 4 is used to gauge the relevance and strength of our candidate instrument, indicated by Z in equation 4. Equation 5, however, which is the second stage and our main model of the control function approach, excludes the candidate instrument, but rather included the residual, the reduced form residual in equation 5 to make inequality exogenous. Inclusion of residual in equation 5 makes inequality exogenous if its coefficient is significant. And also, we included the interaction of the residual and inequality to control for heterogeneity of the effect of consumption inequality. For the purposes of robustness check, we carried out an alternative identification procedure using the Lobel 2012 two-stage least square heteroscedasticity-based approach. As a recap, Objective 1 seeks to assess spatial development of inequality across national and ecological zones. Figure 3 shows the trend across figure 3 shows the national trend, and we can all see from panel A and B of showing the trend for Gini coefficient and that of the tails L index between 2005 and 2017. We can see from panel A that there is an upward trend in consumption inequality from 2005 and 2017 as established by earlier studies. For tail index 2, we can see an upward trend from 2005 of 0.286 units to 0.314 units. However, scrutinizing the trend across ecological zones over time reveals some nuances. We can observe from figure 4 that the upward trend holds strongly for the savanna zone, followed by the forest, but not for districts within coastal zone, which experience a downward spiral. This observation is not far-fetched, given that the coastal zone of Ghana, the prominence of the coastal zone of Ghana can be traced to the colonial era, where the apparent proximity of this area to the coast made it a hub of economic activities. And over time, successive governments have continued to invest in this region, and it becoming a hub of economic development. This observation regarding the coast affirms the theory of cumulative causation, and generally for the southern Ghana, which has recorded considerable state and private investment over the years compared to that of the northern Ghana, which hosts the Savannah zone. For our second objective, we can we recap the objective for our second objective, which is to examine the causal link from consumption inequality to multi-dimensional poverty. Table 2 provides the descriptive statistics of key variables. That's the multi-dimensional poverty measures and the inequality measures. The table 2 can show that from panel A, that average multi-dimensional deprivation scores is 29%, and it ranges from 0 to 95.3%. The multi-dimensional poverty, which identifies a multi-dimensional poor household, is 33.6%, and it's a binary variable. The main inequality measures using the Gini and the Tails L index, the average values at the household level, the average value for the households were 32.8% and 19%. The candidate instrument district population share in 2017 and the log of district surface land area in square kilometers are also provided over here in panel C. For instance, the district population share shows that the average district population share is 1.3%, and it ranges from 0.01% to 7.34%. Figure 4 shows a bivariate relationship between consumption inequality and multi-dimensional poverty. We can all see from this figure, that figure 5, that the fitted line represented by the 95% confidence interval, the fitted line reveals a positive discernible pattern between multidimensional poverty and inequality. This provides an early motivation concerning the relationship between inequality and multidimensional poverty. At the multivariate level, table 3 present estimate on our baseline OLS model. That is the effect of consumption inequality on multi-dimensional poverty. Columns 1 and 2 adjust for the set of control variables, with column 2 being our full model. So we concentrate on column 2. From column 2, we can see that inequality measured by the Gini at the district level is positively correlated with multidimensional poverty. In terms of magnitude, we observe that the unit increase in district Gini coefficient is associated with an increase in multidimensional poverty by 0.05 units respectively. This finding of inequality increasing effect on multidimensional poverty can be explained within the context of the relative deprivation hypothesis, which notes that inequality induces discouragement and frustration, especially among the less advantaged. And this undermines their capability to function in various dimensions of well-being, including health and education, thereby propagating deprivation. However, we have noted that the estimates concerning our baseline model though promising and support our a priori stance of inequality, increasing multidimensional poverty in the Ghanaian context, it is laden with potential and endogeneity. So we move on to present the estimate of our control function, which resolves this issue of endogeneity. Table 4 provides the first stage reduced form regression, which presents the estimate on the determinants of consumption inequality, with the candidate instrument being the focal point. That's district population share and log of district surface land area. We can observe across the various types of inequalities, that is the Gini in column 1, tails L index, column 2, the Atkinson class of inequality, that our candidate instruments have a positive and significant correlation with inequality, irrespective of the measure. This shows that our candidate instruments are relevant. And we can argue that in the case of district population share, that larger districts deepen the inequality situation, arguably through their access to larger district assembly common fund, and also their ability to lobby for the provision of public services in a such political climate like Ghana. In the case of the district service land area, we can interpret the positively significant correlation within the context that the indiscriminate creation and redesignation of district over several years without recourse to district endowment. For instance, the size of a district is also accentuating the inequality situation of the country. The F statistics, more than 10 in each of our model, has shown that not only are our candidate instruments relevant, they are also strong. So we move on to the second stage. For the second stage results of our control function, we examine the effect of consumption inequality on multidimensional poverty. Columns 1 and 2 show the estimates after adjusting for key controls, with column 2 being our focal estimate, the full model, which is our main interest. We can all observe from table 5, column 2, that the inclusion of the reduced form residual and its significance validate the need to make consumption inequality exogenous. And also the inclusion of the inequality measure, the interaction of the inequality and the residual controls for the heterogeneity of the effect of consumption inequality. Focusing on the estimate, we can see that inequality has a positive association with multi-dimensional poverty. Specifically, in column 2, we observe that a unit increase in district Gini coefficient increases multi-dimensional poverty by 0.531 units. Because of the presence of interaction, the magnitude of 0.431 is really equivalent to the coefficient of inequality plus the coefficient of the interaction times the mean of the residual. We also apply the second test of identification to ensure that our instruments are valid. So the finding from our control function that inequality increases multi-dimensional poverty within the context of Ghana is supported by the cumulative causation theory, indicating that over several years, the concentration of economic activities and growth within certain parts of the country over the years is creating widespread deprivation among households. We can also make a compelling case for the tunnel effect hypothesis, which states that if inequality persists over a long period of time, in the case of Ghana, the inequality situation has persisted for more than 2 decades. The positive attitudes towards inequality may be eroded or reversed, which will pose negative consequences on well-being. So these may also be operational within the Ghanaian context. So we can conclude within the Ghanaian context that consumption inequality at the district level increases household multidimensional poverty. We further subject these analysis coming from our main model to 3 main robustness checks. The first robustness check is the effect of inequality on multidimensional poverty using alternative multidimensional poverty measures. Our initial measure used the multidimensional deprivation scores, which is the weighted deprivation score. In the alternative measure, we use a multidimensional poverty dummy, which is the proportion of households that are multidimensionally poor. And the deprivation count, which is merely an additive index of the 13 indicators for the first robustness check. For the second robustness check in table 7, we assess the consumption inequality multidimensional poverty nexus across alternative inequality measures, i.e. the Tails L index in column 1 and the Atkinson class of inequality 1 in column 2. Finally, our third robustness check was to employ alternative identification procedure using the Lobel 2-stage least square approach that combines both internal and external instruments. Column 1 shows the estimate for the Gini, and 2 and 3 for that of Tails L index and Atkinson 1 inequality. Across all the 3 robustness checks, we observe that the inequality increasing effect on multidimensional poverty is maintained. Finally, we look at the heterogeneous effects across location and gender in the inequality multidimensional poverty. Columns 1 and 2 presents the result for the rural and urban, whereas 3 and 4 presents that of the male-headed and female-headed households. From column 1 and 2, we can observe that the inequality increasing effect on multidimensional poverty is mainly a rural phenomenon. And this is not far-fetched, given that poverty generally is principally a rural phenomenon in Ghana and in most developing countries. For across gender lines, we observe that the inequality increasing effect is more pronounced among male-headed households compared to their female counterparts. Our third objective, assess the potential roles of neighborhood unrest and labor market challenges in the inequality multidimensional poverty linkage. To do this, we employ the Barron and Kenny approach to mediation analysis. This approach involves a 2-step procedure as evident in existing studies. The first procedure is that we identify potential mediators that are correlated with consumption inequality. Column 1 shows the correlation between neighborhood unrest and inequality measured by Gini. Columns 2, 3, and 4 shows the respective correlation between the labor market indicators and districts inequality measured by the Gini coefficient. We can observe that it is only in the case of column 1 in table 10 that we observe a positive and statistical significant relationship between neighborhood unrest and Gini coefficient. This means that at the first step, neighborhood unrest is showing evidence to be a potential mediator, but we have to subject this to the second step. Hence, in the second step, we focus mainly on neighborhood unrest, given that the labor market indicators did not establish any correlation. So for the second step, for neighborhood unrest to be justified as a potential channel of influence in the inequality poverty nexus, besides being correlated with district inequality, its inclusion as a covariate in the poverty model should lead to a decrease in the coefficient of inequality. So you can see in columns 1 and 2, we present a parsimonious model of inequality on poverty. And column 3 and 4 leverage on our full model using the control function. Using columns 1 and 2, we can observe that including neighborhood unrest in column 2 as a covariate in the multidimensional poverty model reduces the coefficient of inequality from 0.341 units to 0.319 units. In the case of our full model using the control function, that is column 3 and 4, where we included the neighborhood unrests as a covariate. We can also see from here that district inequality measured by the Gini decreased from 0.531 units to 0.530 units. Scrutinizing the neighborhood unrest in the poverty model, we can see in column 2, the parsimonious model, that neighborhood unrest significantly increases multidimensional poverty. When we move to the full model, even though neighborhood unrest loss is significant, it still has a positive linkage with multidimensional poverty. But the justification is based on the fact that when we include our potential mediator, it should lead to a decrease in the inequality coefficient, which we have established in column 2 and column 4. We can therefore conclude that neighborhood unrest is a potential channel through which inequality transmits to affect multidimensional poverty. And this outcome is not far-fetched, given that when inequality persists over several periods, any positive attitude towards inequality will be reversed. And one of the reversal will lead to diffusion of violence, and the diffusion of violence which can translate into societal issues such as neighborhood unrest. So based on these results, we put forward 3 main findings from this work. That over the period we considered for this study, 2005 and 2017, corresponding with GLSS 5 and GLSS 7, we find an upward trend in consumption inequality at the national level. However, the forest for the national level, and observe the same trend for the forest and savanna zones, but not for the coastal zone, which indicated a downward spiral. Our second main finding is that consumption inequality is positively correlated with multi-dimensional poverty. And this holds especially in rural areas and among male-headed households. Finally, we found that neighborhood unrest strengthens the positive correlation between inequality and multidimensional poverty. The main limitation of this study, however, is that our data allowed us to explore only one potential channel variable, whereas several variables can mediate the relationship between inequality and multidimensional poverty. We are therefore taxing prospective studies to explore other channels. On that note, I thank my audience for following through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. That was really thought-provoking. We'll take questions from the audience. I'm also in a room with a couple of people, so if anyone has questions here, they can let me know.
Hello, Emma. Do you need a response from me?
No, I was waiting to see if there were questions, but if there aren't, they're from my side. Would you mind maybe putting your camera on for us so that we can see your face as well? Thank you. So I suppose if there are no questions from the audience at this stage, what I was wondering is why we wouldn't expect your instrumental variables to affect multidimensional poverty as well. I suppose I'm thinking of the one in particular about investment in districts. And if part of your multidimensional poverty measures that, like sanitation, I can't remember all the ones that you listed, but I would imagine that those could be directly affected by that investment and not just through the channel of inequality, or I could be missing something.
Thank you, Emma. Do we have to pick some additional questions, or I can respond to this one now?
I think you can respond to this one and then
okay,
you can revert.
Okay, good. Yeah, so Emma, yeah, that's genuine concern of investment, which you mentioned, affecting multidimensional poverty directly. Yeah, it is a concern. However, as I mentioned, within our multidimensional poverty, we control for key confounding variables at the district level, such as the district's development scores and provision of public services, such as the number of basic and secondary schools within the districts. With that effect on multidimensional poverty through the instrument, as you mentioned, like the population share in the district, the development scores of the development score or the development index of the district will capture that direct effect. Because once a district is developed, it's expected that the provision of some investment in these dimensions are also catered for. Dimensions such as sanitation, health, and education are adequately captured for. So bringing a development score into our model will confound that effect that we anticipate.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Don't see any hands from the participants, so I might just allow myself one more question. And I was curious why when you showed the effect of inequality by the gender of the household head, it was lower for female-headed households. Do you have any thoughts about why that is the case?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because in the case across the gender dimensions, across the gender dimensions, the observation is that whether male-headed or female-headed household, the inequality increasing effects on multidimensional poverty is maintained. However, it is more pronounced for male-headed households compared to female-headed households. Yeah, so for now, I cannot use any theory to explain that, but thinking on top of my mind has to do with the level of absorbing discouragement or frustration within the context of inequality across the gender domains may also have implications on this result, which I can explore a theory over there to see whether males or female, which of them can handle discouragement or frustration better, and that could be driving the result. But I'm really yet to do that. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that response. There was just one more question from the room here, which was that this has apparently been submitted to a journal, and they were just wondering to which journal that was.
Hello, can I get the question again?
Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, please. You can come again.
So someone in the room here was asking that, or apparently you've submitted this to a journal, and they were just wondering to which journal.
Okay. Yeah. So
Raymond, I think we've lost you. Sorry, you froze a little bit there. So we didn't hear your response. Sorry.
Oh, okay. It's the internet. That should be social indicators research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Don't see any. Oh, Nicola, you can unmute and go ahead. Nicola.
Sorry, I didn't know how to unmute myself. So this is a question coming from thinking about these GLSs over time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is a little bit of a detailed question, and I might have missed something. So you were saying that the district boundaries had changed, I think, between the 5 and 6 GLS. So could you tell me a little bit about how much they change? And then, if I understood you correctly, you took data, administrative data from 2017 and applied it to your analysis. But if I understood the point, it said that you had aligned your 6 and 7 to the earlier districts. So I was just wondering how you did that. If your administrative data is at the level of the district in 2017, and then you could you do like a share of? Yeah, could you just maybe talk to that point? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I got your question clearly. Good. So the 3 rounds of the GLSS, that is the GLSS 5, 6, and 7, were only used for objective 1. That is the spatial development of consumption inequality in Ghana. For objective 2 and 3, which examines the inequality multidimensional poverty nexus, that was when we leveraged only on the GLSS 7, mainly because it is the most recent and adequately captures indicators for measuring the multidimensional poverty. This data was collected in 2016-2017 survey period. So using administrative data within that same period corresponds with the survey.
Thank you. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Raymond. Do we have any further questions from our online audience? If not, then I think all that remains, Raymond, is for us in the ACEIR South Africa node to thank you very much for sharing with us today, and all the best with publishing this interesting work. And yeah, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma, and everyone for also making time for the presentation and for the platform to share our findings.
Thank you. Thank you, Raymond.
Yeah.